Today we're making apple pie. I feel like everybody loves apple pie, and this is gonna be the easiest apple pie recipe you've ever seen. First thing we're gonna do, take our can of apple pie filling, get that open. No, absolutely not. That's not what we're doing. Did that just break all over my floor? No, we're making this apple pie completely from scratch. Homemade crust, homemade pie filling. It's gonna be the best apple pie you've ever had. First thing we're gonna do is make our crust. So I got my flour, sugar, salt in the food processor ready to go. If you didn't see my video for homemade pie crust, check that out. I go in depth on how I make the pie crust. I show you 2 different ways to do it. The crust is really important. Think about it. Every bite you're eating the crust is just as important as the filling. So I like to add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Pulse that. Got my 2 sticks of cold unsalted butter that I cut into cubes. With the food processor running, we'll slowly add that in. Okay, well that's incorporated. And now, again, another key ingredient for this apple pie to give it that added flavor and let it stand out from the rest. I add some apple brandy to the pie crust mixture. I mix that with water, put it in the freezer, let it get nice and cold, and that's gonna bind our pie crust together and give it a really nice flavor. We'll slowly add this. Okay, this looks ready. And the alcohol is going to cook off as the pie bakes. And again, if you don't want that alcohol, just leave it out and just add your water. I'll have all the measurements for everything in the description box. We just want to bring this dough together. All right, that looks good. And since this is going to be our pie shell and our top, we'll divide this in half. Wrap each piece in plastic wrap. And then we'll just roll it, flatten it out a bit so it's easier to roll out when we're ready. You want to put this in the fridge at least an hour, and while it's getting ready in the fridge, we'll make our filling. So now we can go ahead and get our apples ready for our filling. I have Granny Smith apples today, and whenever I make apple pie, I use one of 3 apples: Granny Smith, Honey Crisp, or Pink Lady. Pink Lady apples are really awesome for this, and with those, you don't even have to peel the skin. It gives apple pie a nice pink hue color. It looks really nice. Today I got the Granny Smiths, and these are good because when you cook them, they don't turn to mush. They hold their shape really well. They're nice and firm. They're a little tart, so it goes nicely with the sweetness. Granny Smiths are probably my #1 choice just because of the texture and the tartness that the apple has. So I'm just going to peel these with a paring knife. You could use a vegetable peeler. And we want about at least 3 pounds of apples. Alright, so all our apples are sliced. And if you have an apple coring tool, you could use that. That works fine. I like to just cut around the core. We don't want them too thin. I like to be able to see the shape of the apple in the pie. Add them to a bowl. Do that for the rest. Keep the apple cores for the squirrels. Okay, so all our apples are cut. So with all our apples ready, I'm going to put the juice of half a lemon. It's going to keep the apples from oxidizing. It's going to give the filling a nice freshness. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of salt, half a cup of white sugar. Give that a nice toss. So this is the best method I found to make apple pie because you need to par cook the apples before you bake it in the crust. If we were making a blueberry pie or a cherry pie, any other berry pie where you add all the ingredients, mix everything in, add it to your pie crust and bake it, it cooks perfectly. If we were to do that with the apples, they wouldn't cook all the way through. There's a lot of moisture in these apples, so as they bake, if we were to just put this in our pie shell, that moisture is going to come out and you're just going to have a runny pie. You're going to cut into it and it's just going to go all over the place, and it's really frustrating when that happens. It's happened to me numerous times. It's really frustrating, but like anything, you have to make mistakes in order to get better. So the method that I found the best is I added my white sugar, the salt, lemon juice. Now we're going to add this to a pan and we're going to par cook these apples. And I'm going to show you how to get the perfect consistency for your apple pie filling. So I got a pan here over medium-high heat. I have a 1/4 cup of butter and we're just going to melt this down. And then we're going to add our apple mixture to this and we're just going to cook that for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so. And then we're going to take the apples out, let them strain, and then we're going to take that liquid, add the rest of our ingredients, and we're going to cook that to a perfect syrup consistency and then toss that with the apples. This way, as our apple pie bakes, it's not going to be runny and it's going to be a perfect, beautiful consistency when we cut into it. Another advantage of cooking out all the liquid from the apples is you won't have a soggy crust. because as it bakes, it's going to release all that moisture onto your crust, and the crust is just going to become soggy. And you don't want a soggy crust. You want it to be nice, crisp, and flaky. So doing this will ensure that. We'll add our apples. Turn the heat down to medium, and we'll just let this start to cook. And this is a really important step to have a perfect apple pie. We'll put a lid on this, let this go a few minutes, let all that moisture come out of the apples, and then we'll drain them off, and we'll cook our liquid to a nice syrup consistency. All right, so our apples have been cooking for just over 5 minutes, releasing a lot of their juices. They're starting to soften. So now I'm just going to strain this off. Let all that juice strain out from the apples. And we're going to add that mixture back to the pan with just the juice. And to that, we're going to add 1/3 cup of brown sugar and a tablespoon of cornstarch to thicken up this liquid. So we're almost making a caramel that's going to thicken up nicely, and this is going to coat the apples. And that's going to give you the perfect filling. You can see the mixture already thickening. This is a beautiful caramel. And this is going to coat those apples perfectly, and then we're going to add some nice spices to this apple pie to really give it a nice flavor. Alright, that looks perfect. Turn off the heat. And now we'll just pour that caramel mixture over our apples. Make sure you get all of it. And that caramel mixture coat all of our apples. So now it's time to really add the flavor to our apple pie and add the spices. I love a lot of spices in my apple pie. I don't like just the apples tossed with the sugar. I like to add some really nice flavor. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger. Love the ginger in there. And you can adjust the spices to your liking. If you like less spice, add less spice. Me, I like to have as much spice as possible. And then 1/8 teaspoon of ground clove, 1/8 teaspoon of ground allspice. And then we're going to grate in just a touch of fresh nutmeg. And this smells amazing. The apples are beautifully coated. It's not runny, it's not thin. So that's why par cooking your apples in the pan and getting everything to the right consistency is the best way to go when making this apple pie. So we'll set this aside, let this completely cool, and then we can roll out our dough. All right, I got my pie dough out of the fridge, ready to roll this out and get this pie baked off. I'll just get some flour down. Our rolling pin, I don't want anything to stick. And we'll just roll this out. Even pressure. Turning it about a quarter turns each roll. From the center out. A little bit of cracking, don't worry about it. You could always repair that. So we'll bring our pie plate here. We'll roll our dough onto our pan. Pie pan down. And just roll the dough on. You want to have some excess, it's perfect. Press it down. See the color of the pie dough from that cinnamon and that apple brandy we used. It's really going to be flavorful. Cut off the excess. Save the scraps for another pie, or roll them up and bake them into little pie crust cookies. Put this in the fridge, and then we'll roll out our top. For the top, we'll do the same thing. Quarter turns, the center out, even pressure, just roll it out. For this dough, I'm not going to do a lattice top. Of course, if you want to do a lattice top, that's fine. For my peach pie video, I do a lattice top. Check that out. For the apple pie, I like to cover the whole pie with the crust. Alright, oven's preheated. Add our filling. I really recommend using all those spices. It smells so fantastic and it's just really great flavor for this apple pie. Push it down a bit. Have a bit of a mound in the middle. We don't want pockets of air in our filling. Roll our dough on our pan and cover. Remove the excess. We have a lot of dough left over. It's good to make mini pies. We just want to tuck this onto our other dough. And from here, crimp a little design. You can use a fork to just take 2 fingers on one hand, my index finger on the other hand. Okay, that looks pretty good. Probably one of the most important steps. I have an egg with a tablespoon of milk. You could use cream or water, give that a mix, and we want to give this a nice egg wash. That's going to give us a beautiful golden brown color and really make this pie look beautiful. You always want to egg wash the pie before we bake it. Give that a nice egg wash. Make sure we cover all the crust. All right, we got our egg wash, and now we'll top it with some nice turbinado sugar. You could use regular sugar, or you could just leave the sugar out, but the sugar really gives a nice sweetness and texture to the crust, especially with the turbinado sugar. Generously sprinkle that all over. And we want steam to escape, so we'll just make a few slits in the center of our pie, or as close to the center as I could get by eyeballing it. To protect our pie, we want to tent it, because our crust is going to start to brown. It's going to burn before the rest of the pie is cooked. Just take a little bit of foil, tent that, put that in the oven, check on it about 45 minutes. All right, so the apple pie took an hour in the oven. It looks really good. The kitchen smells amazing right now from all these spices in this apple pie. Nice color on our crust. So we tented the pie, the outside didn't burn, everything browned nicely. So we don't want to just cut right into this. Let this hang out at least an hour, let everything settle. We don't want to just cut it, have it fall apart, or burn our mouth. And then this will be ready to enjoy. So let this chill an hour, and then we'll cut into it. All right, the apple pie rested an hour. Let's cut a slice here. That looks good. You can still see the apples. They're not just mush, they still have their shape. The pie isn't falling apart. Juices aren't running all over. That is a beautiful piece of apple pie right there. So that really is, in my opinion, the best way to make apple pie. Crust is so flavorful. We add that cinnamon to it and that apple brandy. Take those apples, cook them down, par cook the apples, get all the moisture out of them. This way we have a nice, beautiful, uniform pie without everything running all over. Beautifully coated spiced apples. This is definitely the way to do it. All we need now is a nice scoop of vanilla ice cream. We are good to go. So go ahead and make this apple pie. You will be glad you did. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.